Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. It's your host, Sarah. And today we are back with week 2 of the conversation with Nicole from last week. We were talking about her experience with BPD and autoimmune disorders and the nonprofit that she started to support folks like us. So we left off with a cliffhanger. We left off talking about her experience as a Black woman experiencing healthcare inequality. And the question was, is my leg going to be amputated or not? This question shouldn't have even been asked, frankly. And I'm excited for y'all to hear how Nicole advocated for herself. So, Nicole, thank you so much. We're so glad to share the second half of your story. And for those of you on Patreon, there is an extended episode from Nicole, about 30 more minutes, waiting for you. All right, let's jump in.
But at the time they were like, it's MRSA, blah, blah, blah. So they check me in, promise you. They come in, these two doctors come in, never seen them before in my life. And so they're telling me the only option available for what just happened, given my autoimmune stuff, right, that everybody's always having a hard time finding, right? But given that, I cannot, the only option available for me to save my leg is to amputate.
Absolutely not.
I promise you, the only option, my family met my brother and sister-in-law, niece and nephew, they were there. The only option, and they will tell you what I said to them. I took a deep breath. I was chanting under my breath, my Buddhist practice or whatever. I was chanting. And when they stopped talking, I stopped chanting and I looked up at them and I said, so I know you guys don't know me, but I love deep house music like I love my family members, right? I was like, my niece and nephew mean everything to me. That's how much I love, because I didn't have my child yet. I was like, that's how much I love deep house music. I'm what you call a house head. Guess what I need in order to dance to house music? Two legs, right? So, because that's how I like to do it. So, at the end of the day, so given that, I need you all to go out of the room, think about it, put your heads together, come up with a whole other plan that doesn't require you cutting off the one thing that I need in order to dance. And I'll be here when you get back. They looked at me, recognized, I promise you, I did not lose eyes. I did not lose their eye contact for 1 minute. I needed them to know how serious I was. Those doctors came back in with a third specialist girl, and literally like an hour later, they were laying out 5 surgeries that I need to have. And they were going to take skin from one area to do a skin graft to this other area. I was all about it. I don't care. Yes, my leg is ugly and it looks with the skin graft or whatever, but guess who still has both of her damn legs? Imagine if I had not advocated for myself, if I
Uh,
had just been like, okay, if you say so.
Also, who are these doctors? They need to be reported. I have been, and granted, I didn't know your condition. I wasn't there. I'm not a medical doctor, but I have seen hundreds of clients in hospitals over the years, many of whom have had MRSA, and you gown up in personal protective equipment and you treat it. I have never heard of a single person with MRSA who is even 90 years old recommended to have an amputation. Plenty
Thank
of
you.
people with gangrene don't even have amputations and they get treated. That is so stupid.
When I say, and I was, and my family members, everyone else was looking at me like I was crazy, like, oh, because you listen to the doctors, you know what I'm saying? Like, how dare you, Nicole? What are you doing? And why are you being resistant? And this and the other. And I was like, no. This is what down to the point of leaving the hospital. I wrote, I don't miss Christmas with my family. every Christmas Eve I spend with my niece and nephew playing Santa, and I'm not missing one this year. And they were like, "Well, you're not going to be able to get out of here. We need this wound vac. You have to go home with this wound vac, and we don't have anything." They gave me and I just, no, it doesn't work for me because this just goes back to another example of people they don't listen anymore. They just don't want to listen. And when you are a black woman on top of that, they really aren't hearing you. These same individuals who were dismissing me throughout the day with my different physical needs, they would listen to my mother would call them from her home. She didn't even come. She came to the hospital one time. I was in the hospital for almost 2 months with the different surgeries. She came to the hospital one time, but she made friends with those nurses every day, and she would call to commiserate about how anxiety filled I was being. Just give her an Ativan was what the conversations that they would have about me. But these same individuals would then find their way into my room after their shifts to get coaching from me on their careers and what they needed to do and to vent about their coworkers and this and the other.
Completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. I will say, I mean, we treat medical doctors in this country like frickin' Jesus Christ reincarnated. And there's a lot of, I mean, if we made education free, then there might be more doctors, and then we might not treat them like that. But, anyways, whatever. Um, I think this is one of the things that is uniquely painful and beautiful about having borderline is that you learn that not all doctors are good doctors, and you
Mm,
learn to not trust every doctor's opinion, and you learn to self-advocate, even though it's really painful, and even though the path to learning that can include a lot of physical pain and neglect. I do think a good majority of us learn that lesson, and I think it's an important lesson to learn. Um, and it's a hard lesson to explain to people who will be involved in our care, because people who don't have borderline may not have seen that people don't take us seriously. Um, and I've had to explain to my husband, like, okay, Talon, no matter what, if I am in a medical facility that isn't a psychiatric facility, I need you to make sure that they don't learn about my borderline diagnosis, that you don't have
mhm,
any of my psychiatric notes given there. And if they ask about what medications I'm on, tell them all of my medications. But when they ask why, tell them I'm being treated for a mood disorder, not borderline.
mhm.
And that's like essential in making sure you get good care.
Isn't that sad, but necessary? Because the stigma is real in spite of themselves. Like, you experience stigma from our own mental health communities, you know what I'm saying? And like, I could tell you about one situation, but it's like even in our own communities where we're supposed to get each other and we're supposed to have some compassion, it's something about the, once somebody hears BPD, that's it. It's a wrap. And they have decided who you are, what you are capable of, how disruptive you're about to be for them. They've already, just gone down the rabbit hole. And I definitely would. I'm so glad that you thought enough to be like, no, here's our action plan for when we're in crisis, because you have to tell people that you have to advocate for yourself. And even down to the point where I will take my child with me to places where I know either we've been before and there have been some kind of hiccup communication wise or whatever. I will say to him, okay, I need you to go in here and do this or take care of that. Because in those places where I know this is about to be crazy, they're not going to listen to me. It's going to go all kinds of, left. So I believe in having you know, human advocates or BPD buddies is what I call them when we go out into the world because otherwise, it's sleep. And you never know these days with everything being automated now and you go and you log into the system and you put your medical stuff in there. You don't know what these notes, side notes are that these people are putting. You only know when you show up at a place and all of a sudden people are treating you a certain way and you can't figure it out, only to find out, oh, they're in on it now. They know about it, or X, Y, and Z. They've seen the diagnosis somewhere, from some cross information that they're sharing because they're using that one. Like here in Atlanta, it's Piedmont Healthcare and what's the other one? Emory. They have like these portals that you go into, but they're shared with other specialists that, are under either Piedmont or Emory. And so if you're a doctor in a certain area, you could log into my file and read all about me. So if one of these providers has, written a rude note or something about their exchange, that it's like school, that's following you around and you don't even know about it. Because when you go to ask for your records or you got to jump through hoops to try to get your own medical records back from anyone. It's crazy to me.
It is. It is absolutely crazy. And it's so unfair. And this is actually one of the interesting things. And for people listening who are interested in pursuing their career in mental health, my experience is unique because I have done so much community-based work before I became an individual therapist. But for me, there's very few hospitals that I can go to where I wouldn't be in a system where I've worked with people professionally. So, like, even in
Mm.
this area that I have moved to, I work doing evaluations at our local hospital. So, if something was happening to me, I would not go to my local hospital. I would not go to my second local hospital. I would go to the third, which is an hour and 45 minutes away, because that hospital, if they learn about my borderline, I don't work with that hospital.
Mm.
So, there's those weird dynamics too of not only like avoiding stigma in the medical system, but avoiding stigma at work. But then when you work in the healthcare system, medical system, mental health field, or whatever, those things cross over a lot. And I'm sure
So
you kind of
sad.
experience that in being a career coach. It's like, well, do you ever worry about people knowing about your mental health and if there's stigma, then receiving coaching from you? I don't know if that's part of your experience.
Yeah, I just this year when I started the nonprofit, um, I wasn't even telling people like my name wasn't on there, and then I started to get pushback from the community that I'm trying to support, and they were like, "We want to know your journey. We want to know, and so I felt like part of the overcoming the stigma and the shame and the fear is overcoming that within myself too. If I'm asking other people to do it. When it comes to BPT, I've got to do it for myself too. And so that's the only reason why I started to put myself out there this year. And I still have clients, but they're clients that I've had for years. I haven't gotten any new clients this year. Well, that's not true. The new clients that I've gotten this year was before I actually put my like picture and everything on the website. Only one of my clients knows about my diagnosis and the others do not. And so I've told all of them about the nonprofit as a way to start the conversation, but only one of those clients is who asked me further information about it. And for the very same reason that you just mentioned is because all these years I've been a career leadership coach and I'm in corporate America and corporate training, leading teams, directing teams for 30 years. And I have helped thousands of people find their dream jobs, and my success record speaks for itself. All of my clients come through referrals, etc. However, I know that if I were to say to any of them, my previous clients, this is what my journey is like, do you still want to work with me? I feel like I would lose a significant amount of my clients. And so knowing that I started this nonprofit for BPD, it was something that I had to come to terms with, reconcile myself before starting it, that I had to be okay with the fact that I might lose and figure out another way to, generate revenue. So maybe if I'm losing clients on the career and leadership coaching side because they cannot, navigate this piece, then maybe that means that I'm going to bring in more revenue for the nonprofit so that I can build some of these biometric wearables and virtual reality games that I really want to build for our community. So I'm trying to look at it that way, even though I know that the reality is, yeah, I probably will lose some folks.
Yeah, it's so scary. Okay, I wanted to know one last thing before we talk just briefly about mothering. Your experience or how you've seen insurance programs, systems, whatever we want to call that, companies kind of like fail or harm people with mental health who are trying to navigate those systems. I've been really open about my freaking shit show experiences with insurance. Can you give a little bit of insight about what that's been like for you, given you have many intersecting kind of diagnoses?
Yeah, when I was working for corporate organizations and had insurance through the companies, a BPD was definitely a treatment that was not covered. The only place for me to get it was to go out on like full disability, stop working. If you're a mother at the time, stop being a mom. Like the only way you could go is to go full inpatient or one of those all day outpatient programs, but still even there, it makes it difficult to navigate your everyday responsibilities when, you with that requirement of being inpatient or outpatient. So that was difficult for me. And then when I got covered, because the BPD aspect was so difficult, that it would often lead to misdiagnoses. And then those misdiagnoses were, you got to take these pills with this. If you bipolar, you got to take this. If you dealing with anxiety, you got to take this. And so it was always another pill for that. And because I would push back or try to talk about, the suicidal ideation part of things, nobody, and even want the weight gain was an issue. And so then with some of them, and so you would take it, then you would gain the weight, and now you have more mental health issues because you're navigating the stigmas of being, overweight or trying to battle that. And so, nobody would listen to you. And then if you don't, you know, you the insurance is not covering it. And so you have to, the ones that you can find, the specialists that are, you then have to pay out of pocket, and they're usually, more expensive. And it's really, yeah, it's been difficult, that part of the journey. And so finding, even when I had insurance, finding a therapist that didn't have their own personal stigma against it immediately would say, I don't cover that. I don't treat that. Good luck finding somebody who does. One therapist even said to me, don't tell anyone else that you have that, because once they write it down, good luck trying to find a job or keep a job, and it's going to harm you in other ways. And that stuck with me. And that's why I was like, okay, yeah, no. Like you telling your husband, Like, don't tell anybody that I have this when I would go. But now I'm like, I'm telling everybody because I've also started to record a lot of the conversations. And so I can show myself that it really is these healthcare systems and these insurance providers that I hate to say it in this sensitive time, but the coverage is not there for us. We're not supported. And if it is covered, it's like you get so many limited visits, and then you can only do, this area of mental health. If you need anything more extensive, now you're at risk of losing your job because you've got to take time. And, it's definitely not set up for you to, when you have a diagnosis of cancer, there's so many resources available to support you. It seems like, from my perspective anyway, it's like, and there's resources, there's, support groups, there's, you name it, you can find. And if you say to employers, I'm battling cancer, it's a different approach of rallying around this person to make sure that they're, okay, and they get their rest and they're not worrying about work. But if you tell someone that, you're having to go out because of this mental health journey, it's, yeah, completely different perspective and response.
Yeah, I think insurance companies are failing on, across the board everywhere. It's way too expensive. They expect way too much out of pocket and they don't cover everything, but they won't always tell you that. And then you'll get hit with this crazy high bill and your attempt to appeal it. That process is a nightmare. And you
Hmm.
call and you get six different answers from six different people. And yeah, I mean, and then the borderline stuff of like, I don't know how many times I've been on the phone with insurance, you know, trying five different ways, calm, yelling before like the fifth call, I finally just break down hysterically. And I'm like, if you guys don't figure this out, I'm at risk of suicide. And then they take it seriously. And it's like, I
Mm.
shouldn't have to say that.
You know, it's so sad that we have to say these kind of things and then yet still deal with the why are you being so emotional part of things? Like, why are we taking it to that extreme? And it's like, no, this is a real, real thing that exists and could potentially happen in our world. And so it has to be taken seriously. It cannot, regardless of how you feel about it personally, if you've signed up to be in the healthcare profession, you have to check your mind at the door. You got to check your heart at the door. Before you jump into that type of profession. Even if you're if you're working for an insurance company, you have to remember, like, right up on the wall, like, what human being means. And remind yourself of you are dealing with a human being. Like, this person should matter. It is a shame to me that we treat our pets better than we treat each other. It is a shame to me. I have a dog that sits literally, this dog barks from sun up to sundown. I'm telling you, the most random. We have quiet hours in this high rise I live in from 10 p.m. at night to 7 a.m. For the last 11 months, going on almost a year now, this dog, since they've moved in, has barked incessantly, like, through my meetings, through my podcast episodes, you name it, and sleep with BPD, especially autoimmune stuff, is critical. I have not been able to sleep for years. So when I'm just falling asleep, here goes the rap, 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 rap. And I mean, not just the average, oh, it's going for like 5, 10 minutes. No, I mean 20 minutes, an hour, and every time I would call the property manager or I would go on a forum and vent about it, crickets, people came for me. Or they would come with these, well, have you tried getting the writing to your neighbor and asking it like it was all of these compassionate, do you know what I'm saying? But I can imagine because I've told you about this one scenario where I drove in a parking lot because I was having a BPD episode and I pulled into this parking lot to get out of the way so I could cry in peace and not cry while I was, driving and cause an accident or whatever. And this woman came and sat there and stared me down on the phone about to call the police for me in this empty building because she wanted to know what I was doing. And I was crying. She wanted to know. But this dog can bark for months. And every time I called the police, animal control, property manager, I was basically told I was the issue in you know, what's the word? I was not being mindful of the fact that this dog has rights or whatever, or the owner's probably left it, or it's probably this, like so many excuses. But when I literally try to go into do the right thing, an empty space so I could just release, get myself together, come back home, or whatever, I was immediately like, what are you doing, black woman? Why are you in this empty parking space in front of this garbage can? What could you possibly be doing?
Hmm. I can only imagine. I mean, I'm sure they thought that you were doing drugs or waiting to pick someone up or gonna have sex or something like that, right? Those are the stories we're all told. Which, by the way, I have been in an empty parking lot, done drugs, and had sex, but I don't think that's what you were doing.
Right. And it was the daytime and it was raining. I had on a bathing suit because I had left my house because I was without AC for like 8 months and they refused to replace it. So my lupus and everything was flaring up, right? So I was miserable and I was like, okay, I can stay here and go postal on these folks. Or I could just leave and go for a drive or whatever. So I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing. So, because I've been there too in my 20s, what I'm saying? We've all done some things, what I'm saying? But this day, I promise I was literally just saying, I need to park here and cry for a minute. And I wasn't even there 2 minutes before she rolled up on me and was just sitting there in her car staring at me and I'm bawling. It wasn't like I was bending over, looking suspicious. I'm lit in my car bawling. So it's rain and me crying. Like, what else could I have been doing? Just
Oh, I hate that. Okay, last question. Before we're going to kind of check out and you can tell us more about your nonprofit. And if you're up for it, Nicole, we'll do a couple more questions on Patreon. But this question is, what advice do you have for other moms parenting who have BPD?
I would say honest communication. First, self-awareness, I think is critical. You have to be like self-aware of what your triggers are and what your like crisis action plan is. That needs to be like really clear and put together. And then honest communication, I think, is also crucial to with your child, your children about, what some of your challenges might be, whether you choose to use that terminology or disclose or whatever is totally up to you. But I feel like at least being honest with here are some of the challenges that I experience can help them understand when they see it happening. Um, provide a safe space, like for questions. I give my son permission to text me, leave me a voice note, or he can wait until, we see each other, then he can actually, talk to me about it if he wants. Or um having their own therapist, I think is also important. Or access to like, a support community. And then I probably have to say something that I know I do a lot, and that is apologize and take accountability. Like, my son and I are good about like establishing and honoring each other's boundaries, but on the rare occasion when, it's not a boundary I knew of, or he steps over mine for the 13th time, or, something like that, we're good about, um, I'm good about holding him accountable to those things. He's also good about holding me accountable. And I'm definitely proactive in terms of apologizing to him, and coming from a place of here's what my intention was versus I know this wasn't what the outcome was, but this was what my intention was. And that seems to help us, remember that we love each other at the end of the day.
I love the openness in communication, which, I know like that kind of how you are open over time changes as your children get older or whatever. But like your kid is a teenager, right? How old is he?
Yeah, he's 13,
For
about to be 14.
I was gonna say I was gonna guess 14. So, I mean, a 14-year-old can understand a lot more than a 10-year-old even.
Hmm. Absolutely.
My guess is that parenting with BPD can have a unique set of emotion regulation challenges.
Yeah, you got to remember that it's going to come because it's part of our journey. And that's where I think the having a space for everybody to kind of show up as their authentic selves, that I have to remind myself sometimes because of my memory issues from the coma that I sometimes forget, oh, this is what a 13-year-old behavior looks like. So when I go to take something personally that's happening or that he's doing or not doing, I have to go back to boundaries and reminding myself, oh, this is normal be or quote unquote, normal behavior. And then I will check in with him. But even when he was younger, we had the safe space where it was we'd go for a drive, and that was our time to update each other on the week or the day, and we called it, what were our wins, and then what did we want to do better next time. So we would just like have those random kind of conversations. Um, and I do feel like no matter what age, they are, as the older as soon as it's feasible that they should have their own person to talk to, whether it's a therapist or I hesitate sometimes with the whole school counselor thing because while they're great and shout out to y'all, you all are fabulous, there is documentation that has to happen, and those labels again can start to, whether it's erroneously or not intentionally, it still can follow your kid around for the rest of his life, and that's not good. So that's one thing that I would say, being mindful of, but just not taking it, trying to remind yourself not to take everything that you're doing personally because we already feel low self-worth in the BPD realm of things. And so when you have coupled with parenting, it's already difficult and you're already second guessing yourself, as an individual. Do I even know my right foot from my left foot? But it's more important to remind ourselves when you're parenting from a BPD lens, especially with a kid who doesn't have BPD, that it's really important to not take things personally and to take that little bit of extra time sometimes in silence to put things back in perspective. Like, is this really what I think it is? Do the facts really support what my feelings are right now? How else could I look at this, differently before responding? And the key is to do some of that, whether it's journaling, whether it's, talking to an audio journal, whether it's a friend, but the key is to ask yourself those kind of questions before we unleash on our kids. Easier said than done sometimes, I know, but that's the goal that I aspire to and that I try to work towards, is to try to get a little more perspective before I go there.
Yeah, I really admire your parenting and your perspective. And I know there's a lot of moms who listen to this podcast who feel pretty lonely at times because it's a unique parenting experience. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
Well, Nicole, tell everyone where they can find you and where they can find your podcast and your nonprofit.
Thank you. So the nonprofit is showmegrace.org, and you can check out our podcasts. You can sign up for a support group and find out about all kinds of BPD resources. More importantly, if you're having a tough day or you just need to talk to somebody in real time, we have a chat feature on there. You can even text us. We have the number listed on there, but you can chat with us, or if you just have a direct question about resources, feel free to, reach out to us to that way. And then we have our email address where you can contact us directly, and that's presspauseforgrace@gmail.com. And the four is the actual number four. So it's presspause, the number four, grace@gmail.com.
I love it. And I'll have the links for that in the show notes. I love that you guys have the chat feature. That's way cool.
Thank you.
So, Nicole, are you up for a few more questions or are you tired?
I am up for a few more questions. Absolutely. I appreciate these questions. I think they're super important.
Awesome. Okay, guys, if you're on Patreon, there's going to be an extended couple more questions with Nicole. So head over there to listen to those. But if you're not, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. That is super helpful for me. It helps us find additional folks who want to listen to the show, want to feel seen, family members who want to learn, and partners who want to understand. If you want to follow along to more than just the podcast, find us on Instagram at Bold Beautiful Borderline, find me at Borderline from Hell, or head over to boldbeautifulborderline.com where there's information, resources, a place to leave a voicemail to be heard on the podcast, which I love, and just general content. All of that information can be found in the show notes. And if you want to get exclusive content, which is bonus episodes, journal prompts, worksheets, all sorts of extra stuff, sometimes videos of me with my hair very crazy with kind of impulsive borderline rants, head over to Patreon and consider becoming a member. That is super helpful with creating content that allows me to destigmatize BPD and all of the other wild mental health struggles that we discuss on the podcast. A huge thanks to everyone who joins on the podcast to share their story and just generally helps keep this thing alive. Especially my friend Corey Evans from the Evergreen Band. He produced and created the music that is the intro and outro for this show, as well as the cover art that was created by my husband, Talon Abbott. Their information is found in the show notes. All of the information discussed in the podcast is purely personal experience. This is not medical recommendations. This is not therapy recommendations. There's no producer for this show. It's all me.